Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, it's Scott Groves here with my new friend, Robert Drysdale, who's I could just say a jiu-jitsu legend in the Las Vegas community and probably worldwide. I feel like I could ask you one question about what's the origin of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and we could talk for 3 hours. So maybe we'll start there. Maybe we'll start with your storied career. We can start wherever you want, but off air right before we started, the question you posed was like, hey, what's changed about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the time that you've been competing and you've been a practitioner and whatnot? I'm gonna get this mic way up in your dome here. But yeah, man, let's start there. What's changed in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in your long career?
Well, March will be 27 years. Been doing jiu-jitsu.
I gotta get this even closer. Sorry.
Closer, yeah. So just over a quarter of a century, which makes it sound so much, so much longer than it actually was. It went by in the blink of an eye, man. Like time flies, and especially when you're having fun and you're doing what you love. I think that the major change has been culturally. We were talking about people. You were mentioning someone who's behaving obnoxiously after winning a match. That was unthinkable then, man. Like it was almost like one of those, especially if you're like a child or a blue belt or a purple belt. If you win a world title at the black belt level, you could probably get away with it. But if you saw a blue belt or a purple belt acting that way, and it wasn't even your coach. It was the culture. It was the people. It was the community itself. Other blue belts who were like, whoa, what are you doing? Right? Like Carlson, Gracie had this thing called poderoso, which translates as to almighty or all powerful, right? And it was this way of kind of put people in check. Hey, man, you're getting too poderoso. You're getting too powerful, too almighty. And that was a major change. Like the lack of accountability has been on the other one. I get this all the time from people. Like people lose.
You're squeezing a little bit to the table. Sorry.
Yeah, there you go. They're always looking for someone to blame, and I'm like, man, this was unthinkable when I was a blue.
What do you mean they're looking for somebody to blame? Their coach or the ref?
They're blaming everyone except themselves. I see, and I deal with this all the time. It's always something else. It's never them. The fact that they are not trying hard enough, or they're not doing things right, or their head is not in the right place, does not cross their mind. It's something just like they'll agree with you. If you have this conversation with them, they go, yeah, no, you're right, coach. But then you watch their behavior, I'm like, it's not there. It's I don't know if I think the world has changed in that regard. I think
I was going to say, do you think that's a bigger cultural thing?
100%. I think it's a worldwide trend, of victimization and glorifying victimhood if it's some kind of achievement. It's not an achievement. It's not an achievement to like blame other people and go, you have to feel good about yourself. But I think some people are just thinking that way, and it's very ingrained. It's made its way into jiu-jitsu, and I feel that jiu-jitsu, as tough as the culture was at one point, it's conceded a lot. And because it's become a business. So if you're running a business, you have to concede to the wants of the customer, right? So it's good and bad. Like, yeah, I can make a comfortable living from jiu-jitsu today because it is a business. But at the same time, we lost a lot of valuable things in the past whereas before, because it wasn't a commercial practice, if you stepped out of line, people had no issues kicking you out. Doesn't make a difference.
Right. Like you're not making any money off you anyway.
Anyway,
right?
Half the people were training for free anyway, so what's the difference? It made no difference. So you could keep the culture in check. It was more like wrestling. Wrestling doesn't have that problem. It's wrestling's problem and its strength, right? Its strength is if you're in college and there's a wrestler stepping out of line and his girlfriend doesn't like the way you run practice, the coach can go, well, you can leave the team and go somewhere else. Goodbye. Good riddance. It makes no difference. Right, goodbye. I'm not going to let you tell me how to run a practice. But if you're in a commercial setting, customer's always right.
Wait a minute. Are you telling me you've had somebody's girlfriend tell you how to run practice?
The wife. I mean, camp. I've had wives tell me how to run a camp. I'm not joking here, man. This is a problem. If you're an MMA, you're an MMA coach, you know what I'm talking about. The dad, the mom, the coach. I mean, the wife, the manager. People get involved. They tell you what to do.
So tell people a little bit about who you are and where you come from, because obviously you've served on a lot of MMA camps in your life, helping these people become better grapplers, better wall fighters, better cage fighters. Tell people about your history. Where does it start in your mind as far as it pertains to combat sports, and like where is it today?
I started jiu-jitsu in Brazil in 1998 at Otávio de Almeida Jr.'s academy. His father was a very influential figure in the history of jiu-jitsu in São Paulo. One of the founding fathers of jiu-jitsu in São Paulo, actually. And I trained there for just under a year before I moved to Las Vegas, plan was to attend college. I would have been 17 years old. I just graduated high school in Brazil. I moved back to the U.S. to go to college. Ended up training a lot more than going to school. I was training with the Luis Pederneiras Association, which was, the time it was John Lewis, Gustavo Dantas, and Steve Da Silva teaching class, J-Sect. That's like the original MMA gym here in Vegas. This is back in 99. So, quite some time ago. And Steve ended up being like my main instructor. And I trained with him. I moved back to Brazil after 2 years. I wanted to compete. It was just not, at the time, there was like 2 competitions a year between Las Vegas and California. You had Copa Pacifica that was run by Kleber Luciano, and you had Joe Moreira's Invitational. That was it. Occasionally a Grappler's Quest. Naga was more, I feel like, on the East Coast. They weren't even here yet. You had no IBJJF events, like none of that. It was just like 2. Every now and then we had to enter judo events because we just wanted to be active and compete more. So there was nothing going on. So I decided to move back to Brazil because I wanted to compete. Trained with Paulo Strecker for 2 years. Most of my purple belt career was with Paulo Strecker. I gained a lot of experience. Like he was great because he made us compete. I want to say twice a month we were competing. There's 1 year I competed 31 times in 1 year.
And this is all back in the gi, traditional
gi.
Brazilian.
There was very, very few no gi going on in Brazil at the time, almost none. It's something we did maybe once a month, just for fun. Today we're going to train no gi, but it was like a surprise kind of thing. We did it once a month. Even when I was competing, when the first time I fought in ADCC was 2005, I was training in the gi up to like a couple weeks before the event, 2-3 weeks before the event. We didn't take it off to the very end there.
We've probably already lost all the non-jiu-jitsu people, but explain to people that maybe are tuning in that aren't jiu-jitsu people, what is ADCC?
Abu Dhabi Combat Club. It was started by Sheikh Tahnoun in, I want to say 98 or 97. I think 98 was the first year, and it was a tournament for kings to watch, for princes to watch, and it was the first time those guys were making any money too. There wasn't a lot of money going around in jiu-jitsu, so a prize of $10,000. Today that doesn't sound like a lot, but at the time that was a fortune, especially if you're from Brazil, right? So the idea was, let's put all the best grapplers on the planet on these mats and find out who wins. So they try to find a middle ground rule. The rule at the end of the day, it's IBJJF rule set. ADCC, It's just modified IBJJF. But it was difficult because if you're in a submission setting and you want to allow for guard pulling or you want to allow for guard playing in general, it's going to be hard not to hurt wrestlers and judokas in general. So they think they tried with a submission only first half, with the penalties guard pulling after that during the second half. I think they attempted to kind of like balance things out for wrestlers a little bit, but it was still to their disadvantage. So they didn't do well. Like you had some like Mark Kerr dominated in the beginning, but eventually it was dominated by Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners. It still is. The occasional sambo guy, judoka goes in there, but it's just too close to the jiu-jitsu sphere of influence for other grapplers to do well in it, right? And it became like a huge tournament because it was prestigious. It was sort of like the Olympics. You only had it every 2 years. Versus the IBJJF Worlds, for example, which is like the other very prestigious one. You have that every year. ADCC was every 2 years. There was money involved. You had to get invited or you had to win trials. So there's like sort of like an elitist sort of, approach that you had to be like one of the top 8 guys in the world or top 16 guys in the world to be in that bracket, right? And you were like, Sheik was inviting people from Russia, from Japan, from Brazil, from Canada, whatever. But the very best people only would enter. So it became very prestigious for that reason. It came up at a time where no one was making paid in jiu-jitsu, and it was, you're grappling in front of sheiks. So that was pretty cool. It's something that didn't exist.
Is the urban legend true that some sheik goes to like USC, starts training jiu-jitsu, falls in love with it, goes back to his dad and has been like, you got to see this. We got to put some money into this. Is this true or is this like urban legend?
Well, I don't think his dad did that. I mean, the story is he was doing college. He was going to college in I think it might have been USC. And he had one of his, I think it's someone who grew up, I won't mention his name, but he's a known guy in the jiu-jitsu community. He was like, grew up with him. And the story goes that the guy who was his assistant acted like he was the rich guy and the sheik was his employee. So the coach kind of felt empathy for the guy who was like the assistant, who in fact was the sheik, and kind of started teaching him on the side and giving him a little extra attention. And then the sheik felt, very kind of warmed up to him. Like, this guy likes me for who I am. He doesn't know I'm a sheik. It was kind of like that Eddie Murphy movie. You ever see that?
Coming to America.
Yeah, it was very much like that. Like, he's working at McDonald's. He was just like living a simple life in the U.S. because he didn't want anyone knowing who he was. I'm family, richest family on the planet. Like I got more money than Jeff Bezos, man. Like it's real money. It's not stock money. It's underneath the ground. That's as safe as it gets. right. You can't touch it.
This is old school oil
that's
money.
Real wealth, right? People talk about Elon Musk. Yeah, it's stock money.
Yeah.
Shit can disappear tomorrow.
Yeah, Tesla can go to zero tomorrow.
It's not real money. Underneath the ground, that is safer than Fort Knox. That's real cash right there, right? So these guys are coming from that world, and he fell in love with jiu-jitsu, and then he decided he wanted to do something. He created a rule set. He organized a tournament, and it was originally held in Abu Dhabi, you know, for the sheiks, for his family, for the royal family. I've been there a couple times. It's quite the experience.
Hey there, Scott Groves with a quick interruption to the podcast. Sorry about that, but I just want to take a quick minute to announce our sponsors here for the podcast, and that sponsor is me, Scott Groves. It's actually the revenue that we generate through doing mortgages here at Neo Home Loans, and the money that we generate from the coaching program that I run, Consolidated Coaching for Loan Officers, coaching by loan officers for loan officers, that helps support this podcast. I really started this in 2021 as a passion project during COVID, and we're excited to bring you a new episode every week, but this only happens if I'm making money in my real full-time job. So please, if you or somebody you know is looking to buy, sell, or refinance a house, our team is licensed in almost every state in the country. And if you know a loan officer who's looking for sales coaching, personal development coaching, lead generation coaching, please, please, please get in touch with us. Scott at the Scott Groves team. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love for you to support our other endeavors, which is mortgage financing and loan officer coaching, which allows this podcast to exist. Now back to your regularly scheduled programming. So talk about you competing in ADCC.
I fought 3 times at ADCC, 2005, 7, and 9. And I lost 2005 second match to Kakareku, who ended up losing to Roger in the final. I got him back in 2007. I ended up winning 2007.
You won the whole thing?
The open weight class, yes. I took third in my division. So
in the open weight class, 2007, I know you're a humble guy, but you're arguably the best grappler in the world in 2007.
Here's the thing, man. Like, there was a minute there. I think every athlete has a minute there where they peak mentally, physically, everything, right? There was a minute there, I think 2007, 8, 9, 6 to 9 maybe. Like, I go months in practice without anyone scoring a point on me. And I know that sounds arrogant, but it's true. Like, I'm just being honest with you. Like, months. Like, someone swept me in practice. It was like a big deal. Like, I'd be losing my mind. Someone passed my guard, I'd be losing my shit. You know, because it's just like in my mind, like I had to make everyone tap. Like 10-minute round, 10 submissions. Like that was the standard. 5-minute round, 5 submissions. Anything less than that was unacceptable.
Right. And these are other black belts. These are other 220-pound guys. It's not like you're going against a bunch of like scrubs.
Oh, elite competitors.
Elite competitors. And in your mind, if you didn't tap them 5 times in 5 minutes, you were a loser.
I fucked up. Yeah, basically. That's the mindset. And, you know, you don't always meet that standard, but that's where the bar is. This is why it drives me crazy when I'm seeing people that, like, you know, they're not happy about training. And I watch them training. Sometimes it's a black belt, and they're training with blue belts, and I'm watching them. And they're barely beating a blue belt. Maybe one submission in 10 minutes, in a 10-minute round. And they're complaining about training. I'm like, you are the problem. It's not your training. It's your mindset. It's your mindset. If you can't make that blue belt tap 10 times in 10 minutes, you're the problem. It's not him. It's not the training. It's you. I think a lot of it comes down to the mindset. It's how you look at your problems, how you look at challenges, how you look at things around. Your worldview is, to me, that's 90% of the equation when it comes to competing. When it comes to like fighter mindset, people don't get it, man. People don't get it. I bump heads with people all the time with this. You guys are wrong. You're looking at the wrong things. Like, I'm watching these guys on YouTube and Instagram. They're doing all this flashy shit that doesn't work. I've never seen that movie. Okay, it's funny. It's cool, but so are spinning kicks. So are nunchucks. Remember nunchucks?
Yeah.
Nunchucks now we make fun of them, but they were cool as shit in the 80s.
Right.
But what's the function of it? I'm just looking at it. I'm just seeing like kids with like flashy gis, like fucking doing shit that wouldn't work. And I'm not interested in it. Like I'm not saying that you shouldn't learn. I'm just saying that there are more important things you need to be focusing on. I'm big on that. To me, like your mindset is, because to me that was my power, man. Like I sucked at jiu-jitsu. People don't believe it. It's true. I'm not an athletic guy. I'm a below average. I'm mediocre on a good day. Any conditioning coach has ever worked with me will tell you the same thing. Like they're surprised sometimes because I'm not a great athlete. Like I've done conditioning with Jacare, Ronaldo Souza.
Yeah.
Bro, I left the gym like almost crying. I was almost crying.
That dude's a freak of nature.
But like everything he does, he's better than you. running faster, jumping higher, squatting more. Like, he didn't even know what creatine was, bro. Like, he didn't know how to, when he first, like, he didn't know anything about, like, weightlifting. I'm like, how the fuck is this guy 10 times stronger than me? He's never done a squat in his life. Like, and he's just a beast of an athlete. And you're like, holy fuck, man. And then after, like, looking back, I go, okay, I didn't do that bad. When you think, when you're considering everything, you're driving a Toyota and someone else is driving a Ferrari. You know, I mean, I'm okay. I'm not a bad driver. But like, so I know that was not my power. And I'm not the most technical guy either. There are guys that are way more technical than me. But my mind was always in the right place. That was my power.
What do you credit that to? Did you have a tough upbringing or a really supportive upbringing, or like what happens that, because 17 for a Brazilian, because you're half Brazilian, correct?
Correct.
So 17 for a Brazilian, that's late to get into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You hear these stories of all these people starting when they're 3-4 years old.
I think that the key age is in between 13, 14, and 18. Those are the key years. I mean, you can start younger. It's not necessarily a huge advantage. If you get a kid started at 9, and then you get another kid that starts 5 years later, let's say at 14, by the time they're both 18, they're more or less the same level.
Why is that? They just feel more comfortable with their body?
I think people expect too much of children. I think that, if you want to do something, I tell this to parents all the time, get your kid to fall in love with the gym life. If that's as much as you should be doing. You shouldn't be trying to make an athlete out of a 9-year-old. It's not going to work. First of all, he's not athletic enough. He can only learn so much. And then you get some kids out there that are brilliant. There are exceptions. I've seen some 8, 9-year-olds that get it. They're like pro athletes already. But those are the exceptions. Like, let's not make the exception the rule, right? I think the teen years are the key years. Like, that's when they're there because they want to. So a lot of times when you're 12, your parents are just dragging you to the gym. You're there because you don't know what else to do. You're just, okay, sir, yes, sir. If you have that sir, yes, sir mentality, but it's not because you really want to be there. But by the time your kid's 16, you can't. I mean, my daughter's 13 now, and I'm already getting close to that age, but it's getting harder to tell them what to do.
Yeah.
They kind of have a mind of their own. This is what I want to do. Right. And like my younger daughter, she's 11. She doesn't want to do jiu-jitsu. I have to, I don't give her a choice. She has to train. She doesn't have to compete, but she has to train. I don't give her a choice. But she wants to do drawing and girly stuff and like gymnastics, which I'm not against, but she also has to train jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
But when the kid is 16 and he wants to be in the gym, 17, 18, and he is driving himself, or he's taking the bus like I did, or riding his bike like I did, well, that's when you know you got something special, because he's there regardless of the parents supporting. I think parents supporting helps, but it's not going to make a difference.
I struggle with this because I definitely have to sit on the sidelines and force myself to be calm, because I 100% have it in my soul and my DNA to be the asshole parent who yells at the umpire during T-ball. Like that's in my soul. It's there. And so I'm not wrong. I think sometimes about this of like getting the kids to fall in love with the gym. And then there's days that they don't want to go. And I'm balancing in my head. It's like, okay, I don't want them to hate this, so that when they turn 14 and they can tell me, or 16 or 18 or whatever age we decide, and they can say, I don't want to do this anymore. But I also don't want to set the standard that like our family are quitters and we don't show up for obligations. So you've coached a lot of kids over your life. How do you balance those two of like, I want them to fall in love with this gym life, and maybe it's jiu-jitsu, maybe it's pickleball, maybe it's something else. But I also don't want to allow them to be quitters when they're having a bad day and they have a little tiny tummy ache, Yeah,
man, that's a tough one, man. Like I struggle with that balance too, because my older daughter, she's a trooper. If I say jump, she goes how high. Like, and then a lot of people tell me she just does it to please me. Like I'll give her, like the other day I bought her Don Quixote. That's a tough read for a 13. It's not a super tough read, but like it's a big read for a 13-year-old, and then she's reading it. I'm like, are you gonna read? This is Daddy's favorite novel. You're gonna read it, right? And I don't, Rob. She's just doing it because she wants to please you. She doesn't really want to read that book. I'm like, really? Maybe, I don't know. Sometimes I think she does things just to make me happy. The little one doesn't give a shit. She doesn't flip me off, but mentally, internally, she kind of does, like
right.
Not physically.
You can see it on her face.
Yes. But I think Khabib said that, and I was like on board with him. And I love Khabib because I just love that culture in general. I think they do a lot of things right. And he goes, my son doesn't have a choice when it comes to training. He can choose to compete or not. When it comes to training, he doesn't have a choice. I'm like, yep, that's it. But you know what the funny thing is? It's like, I don't know. I think we worship freedom so much. We give freedom to children. It's just a strange notion when you think about it. Why should a child have any freedom? What have you done to earn it? You born? Is that it? Okay, but you don't know better. You have no, how are you, what criteria are you using to judge what to do with your free time? Because if you give a child freedom, true freedom, they'll eat potato chips and chocolate all day. They won't go to school and watch TV and play their iPad all day. They're not going to work out at all. That's freedom if you give it. I don't think it works. I think as a parent, you got to tell kids what to do. They need guidance. Not only that, they're going to hate you when they're older too, because they're not going to have the tools necessary to be a healthy adult because they didn't learn anything. And then my children don't respect me. Yeah. No wonder. Like, why would they?
Yeah.
You know, like you're telling them to study, you don't study. You tell them to work out, you don't work out. You're applying standards to them you don't hold yourself to. Like the thing about my daughters, the reason I push them and I can be a little harder on them is because I don't demand of them standards that I don't apply to myself. And I'm the same with my students. I'm known as an asshole. Sure, call me an asshole if you want. But I don't hold you to standards that I don't apply to I hold myself to a higher standard, in fact. I go easy on you guys. Now, you want me to lower the bar more? No, sorry. No, that's not in my household. So, nor not in my gym. Like that's how I run my ship, and I expect people to expect excellence of themselves. And if they don't, I don't know, man. Like I have a hard time like being around people that don't have that sort of standard. Like it's just like, okay, so I'm just wasting my time with you then. Like, what do you want? Oh, I just want to have a good time. Like, fuck, maybe I'm not the right person to be around then. I don't understand why someone goes to the gym and they're not just trying to improve on themselves. And I know I'm wrong. I'm not saying I'm right. I know I'm wrong because most people don't give a shit. And I understand that. But it's still so against my internal nature that I butt heads with people because I want you. The way I look at my students, for example, right? Like you mentioned the kid that was celebrating too much. I go, Buchecha has 13 world titles. He doesn't celebrate like that. How many do you have? 0? Okay, give me 14, and then you can act like that. Give me 14 world titles. Oh, you can't do it? Why? Who's stopping you? Well, what's wrong with you? Why can't you do it? Is it the laws of physics? What's happening? Like Newton's law is working against you? What's happening? You got 2 arms, you got 2 legs, who's stopping you? It's you. You're full of shit, aren't you? Identify the problem, solve it. You understand? Like that's the mindset. Like 14 world titles, why not? You understand? You have to think. And they don't think like that. They win like, I'm not going to mention, but the guy you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Like, dude, like you're completely out of touch with reality. And I'll tell you right away, because I've been doing this long enough. I talk to some of these like young kids with potential, 5-10 minutes just talking to them. I already know if they have it or not. And I'm never wrong about this shit. I'm never wrong because it's the way they think. Unless there's some radical change in the way they think, it's hopeless. It's hopeless. You're just wasting your time. They'll be good, but they're never going to be great. They're never going to reach the top 0.001%. Like I was talking to a student of mine the other day, and like this is exactly what I'm always talking about. And we're talking about the issue of money, because that's all of a sudden it's like the most important topic. It was never an issue. My generation, we didn't make shit fighting. We paid to compete. No one complained. You got like 22-year-olds that are millionaires today, and they're whining about money. It's like, shut up, dude. You got it good, you know. But I had one of my guys, a lot of potential, and he was the question came up: would you rather have an ADCC title, but no one's ever heard of you, no one's going to see you, make no money, or $10 billion? And this guy's a competitor. He said $10 billion. I got mad at him. I interrupted him. I'm like, you're thinking wrong. You're thinking wrong. You need to change the way you think right now. You're never going to make it. I'll tell you that right now. And he was looking at me like I'm the crazy one, right? No, you need to change the way you think. Okay, if you make something after, it's a side effect. It's not why you're doing what you're doing. The way you're thinking is wrong. You have to create a hierarchy of purpose. What is important to me? Set that hierarchy straight in stone. Lock your eyes on the target. Everything else is noise. You understand? They don't get it. And it doesn't matter. You can spell it out, man, in plain English. You can write it down. I talk about this every day. And people look at me, they agree, but they don't. So I understand that everyone wants to think that way. I get it. But I'm talking about people that spend more time on Instagram talking about being champions than training. You want to find out if you're full of shit? Anyone who's listening, I'll prove you wrong. I know. I'll point you right now if you're full of shit or not. Go on your phone, check your screen time on Instagram.
4.5 hours. I did it just the other day.
Okay, if you're spending more time a day on Instagram than you are training, you're full of shit. It's simple. There's a very easy way to spot these things. If you spend more time talking about jiu-jitsu and watching jiu-jitsu and train jiu-jitsu, it's fine if you're a hobbyist. Okay, I'm not picking on hobbyists. I'm talking about the people that are being champions. I'm like, dude, don't waste my time. I don't have time for you. You're full of shit.
So I'm glad you made the distinction between the hobbyists, because like I want to balance two thoughts, like setting the standard for excellence, but like the customer is always right. Because jiu-jitsu has become more consumer palatable, and big names like Joe Rogan talk about it all the time. How do you in your gym decipher between the people that actually have potential and they want to compete and they want to do the stuff versus like, me who's going to show up an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours a day because it's fun? Because I was just having this conversation with somebody the other day. I'll wear some crazy, colorful, stupid, rash guards. And I was explaining to somebody, I'm like, this is just something I do. This is not who I am.
Yeah, no. 100%.
So we're having that debate within the gym, right? Because everybody wants to be level black and so tough and I'm going to kill it and I'm going to be a world champion. I'm like, that's cool, man. That's who you are.
Yeah.
This is not who I am. This is just something I do because it's fun and it's athletic and I like the community and whatnot. So how do you, like, in your gym, how do you decipher between those two people? Because they're showing up to the same class, right?
It's a big problem. It's not a problem that I have. Every gym has this problem. In a perfect world, you had separate mats. In a perfect world, you have 2 different times. In Brazil, this works easy. It works very easy in Brazil. It doesn't work well in America. I'll tell you why. In Brazil, if you're a competitor, you're 22, you live with your parents, you don't have a job. Normal. Maybe you teach jiu-jitsu once a day. Probably not a gym owner. You live with your parents. You are fully committed to training. So you can get together in the morning with your mates for a competition session, and in the evening you can go to your gym and teach a class. And you make just enough to get by and pay for your tournaments. I did that for almost a decade in Brazil. I think like 8 years in Brazil I did that, right? Living with my mom, training every day, twice a day. In the evening I taught a class. That was my schedule, right? If you're in America, your parents kick you out of your house when you're 18. You got to get a job. So now you're working during the day, so you can only train at night. So everyone's training at night. Or some people train in the evening, and then the morning class is full, but it's all mixed up. So you get the 2 groups coexisting. You understand? In Brazil, you can have the Spartans train at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
If they say 10, it's 10:30.
Right.
But, maybe 11.
My wife's Mexican. I'm very familiar with South America time.
Yeah. And then in the evening, you get like the hobbyists. There are plenty of hobbyists in Brazil, right? But the population of... The other thing, too, is the average age in Brazil is a lot lower than America. A lot lower. I say the average in Brazil, let's say, I'm going to guess, they're like 22. Here it's 30. It's changing because we have a lot of kids in the pool now, which didn't exist 20 years ago. If you went to if you watched the juvenile division at the PANS World Championships, right, in 2002 or 3. No, I didn't have. Let's say 2007, they had their first World Championship. In 2007, man, the juvenile was weak. It was not even close to Brazil. Now it's the same. But 2007, Brazil was light years ahead in those divisions, But it's leveled out. But because the population of children training has increased so much, right? Which is something Brazil's not strong on, believe it or not. I mean, they have kids, but it's not as strong as here. I think kids here are better. But the teens there are insane. They start later in Brazil. 13, 14, if you do the blue belt, some of those blue belts in Brazil are just like out of this world good. That age right there. But a lot of times they have to stop because if they do get a job and they go a different way, but the ones that do stick to jiu-jitsu, they become excellent because they have all that time to train. They're living with their parents, But back to your question, regarding like there was I was talking about something else.
The hobbyist versus the pro.
It's a tough one. Like I separate. What I do now is I let people go after an hour 15, so the hobbyists can go, and then we do another hour, 45 minutes to an hour of rounds. So most of my competitors will be on the mats for 2 hours every day, and then the people who are just hobbyists, they have the choice of leaving, which is still complicated because a lot of people who are leaving, they feel bad.
Yeah,
they feel guilty. But
I would feel like a bitch.
And I don't want them to feel that way because, dude, you work a 9 to 5, man. You're a dad. You're 45. Like, I'm not going to apply to you the same standards I'm going to apply to this guy who doesn't shut up about being a champion who's 22. It's different, man. Like, I'm reasonable. Like, I don't have a problem with hobbyists that don't want to go balls to the wall. I get that. Dude, I'm 43. My body's 70. I have arthritis. I started getting signs of arthritis in my mid-30s. It's not normal. You understand? I got 3 herniated discs. I can't go to war anymore. You understand? So I get it. My beef was the people that are young, they have the time, they have the means, they talk the talk and refuse to walk the walk, and when they lose, they blame the Brazilian referee. I can't stand that crowd, the Instagram fighter, because like you're your own worst enemy. And I don't know how many times I have to say it. You are your own worst enemy. You are the problem.
Yeah.
The reason you're not achieving the things you want to achieve is because of you. It's nothing to do with your environment. It has to do with your mindset. So I have a problem with those guys, right? Because I want them to succeed. It's not because I don't like them.
Right.
It's criticism coming from a good place. It's coming from a place of love. I want you to be the person that you want to be. But you got to let me guide you here, man. Like, you got to stop acting like you know better than me because you spend your day on Instagram. You don't know shit. You don't know. You think you do. You don't.
Yeah.
You're brand new to this. Oh, but I'm a brown belt. You're brand new, bro. Oh, but I'm a black belt. You're brand new, bro. You just got your black belt. You're brand new. To me, you're a beginner. I know it sounds arrogant, but you stay in this. You're in this game long enough. You start looking at people that are coral belts. Who no one listens to them, and you start seeing, you know what? This guy has something I don't. It's called wisdom. This guy's been a black belt for 40 years. This guy's got a coral belt or red belt. Because I had an opportunity to chat with some of these guys from my first book. You learn a lot from them. They have something that we don't, and it's time. And you can't fast forward knowledge, wisdom.
Yeah.
You have to be there to gain it, man. It's not something you can just, I'm going to watch this podcast or this YouTube video and then I got it. I'm going to buy this instruction on BJJ Fanatics. That's time. And you can't buy that, So, but for the hobbyists, man, like most of my students no problems at all. Like I don't expect, the only thing is as long as they are looking at jiu-jitsu as a means to improve on themselves. They don't have to be professional athletes. I don't expect that in most people, but I want them to think, I want to change their mindset to some degree. Like, you got to walk off these mats a little bit better. And I'm not just talking technique or in everything, in every regard. Like that's what these mats are for. They're supposed to elevate you, as a human, and I think that's my goal as a coach, but there are different standards. It's difficult to separate, man. I don't have an answer to your question, to be honest. Like, it's not an easy thing to do, especially in a commercial setting. Like, if I had a room of like collegiate wrestlers, all right, we're all gonna migrate to jiu-jitsu. Rob, what are we gonna do? And then the university or the government's writing me a check every month, and they're covering my rent, and I'm just getting a check regardless. 10 ADCC champions in the next 5-6 years, guarantee you, it's easy. Right. There's a reason why like wrestling can like reach the heights of human peak performance, and we're still like crawling behind. It's because it's not the same. We don't have that hierarchy that exists in professional sports. In jiu-jitsu and MMA, you get the fighters running the camp. It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Why is that?
Because the fighters don't know better. I would have done anything to have a customato in my corner, like training me. Like, that's normal in boxing. Like, to have like a Carlson, right? Like that's how it was before. Like, you have your coach, this is what we're doing. It doesn't work anymore because like I said in MMA, the wife comes in and tells you what to do. No, you're gonna hold pads with that guy. Why? Because it's cheaper. I need a new couch. I want to buy a new car next year. So we gotta save money. So this guy's gonna hold pads for you. So it's not about what's best for the fighter. It's about what's best for her. And if you're an MMA coach, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is all over the place.
Yeah.
Managers telling me how to run a camp. I'm like, how many times have you been on the mats again? Ever? How about you do us all a favor? Don't talk. Just be a manager. Like, let us do what we do, and it's a problem because the hierarchy is disrupted, and fighters, myself included, this is everyone, this is human nature. We are inclined to do what we like to do. We're not disciplined enough. Like, we talk about it all the time. I'd show up to the gym every day. Yeah, but you like to show up to the gym every day. That's not discipline. Discipline is doing what you hate.
Yeah.
You understand? And that's where a coach comes in, because I see this with some of my guys. Like, they'll lose matches in a certain way. And like, all right, we're going to work this week. Oh, coach, but I want to work something else. It's their comfort zone. Like, the wrestler wants to work on wrestling. The leg lock guy wants to work leg locks. Yeah, surprise, But the guy that pulls guard doesn't want to wrestle, and the wrestler doesn't want to learn how to do a triangle. But that's where I come in as a coach and go, I don't care what you want to do. We're going to do what you need. I'm not going to give you what you want. You understand? So you have to be a bit of that, like, general kind of mindset, because that's what's going to bring the best out of it. And I've never seen an athlete that has that sort of coaching, or has had that sort of coaching 10 years later, 20 years later, and go, oh, that was terrible coaching. It's always the opposite. It was like, man, I was the best coach I've ever had. Yeah. My best coaches were the ones that told me what to do. But when you think that way, you get called a cult leader. Oh, you're like, trying to tell me what to do. And I'm like, no, I'm trying to help you, bro. I know more than you. There's a reason why you're paying me. There's a reason why you're coming here, right? Let me do my job. Trust me. Oh, I don't trust you. Find a new coach then. You should never train with someone you don't trust. If you don't trust your coach, find a new coach immediately. That's what I tell fighters, because like, if you're not trusted, what are you doing? Oh, my friends are here. Okay, well, you've made your priorities like very clear then. Because I think that this loss of hierarchy to the coach that has happened, like the coach losing the authority, is doing a lot of harm to the fighters because they don't know better. I've seen this. They run their own camps. It doesn't work, man. It doesn't work. Like, I would much rather have a coach tell me exactly what to do. And it's like, yep, I trust you, coach. Put your head down. I'm in a faith there. You know, like, I have faith in what he's doing. I trust this guy. He's done it before. He's walked that path before. You understand? I know he has my best interest. And a coach wants you to win. I've never heard of a coach that's, I want this guy to lose. He wants,
of course.
It's what we love. That's our reward. It's not the membership, bro. We don't do this for money. It's not why we're doing this. We do it because we want to see you win. You got to listen.
Can you talk about your evolution post winning ADCC into the coaching world? Because I know that there was a stint where you were a UFC fighter, or you were a MMA fighter, and then UFC, and that didn't work out. But after that, you go into like full-time coaching, or what does that evolution look like from, call it 2007 to, you know, we're now talking 15, 17 years ago, which is crazy to say that out loud.
When I started jiu-jitsu, it's funny, jiu-jitsu then did not mean anything what it means today. Jiu-jitsu was preparation for MMA, or vale tudo as we called it, right? Jiu-jitsu was preparing you for MMA. That's all it was. So I wanted to train jiu-jitsu to fight MMA. My goal was to be a UFC champion.
That was from the beginning. You wanted to, walking on the mats at 17 in jiu-jitsu was like, this is a means to an end to be a better fighter.
I saw Gracie. I'm like, I have no idea what the guy's doing, but that's what I'm going to do. It was like that. I knew at the second I saw Gracie, Triangle Dan Severn, and that UFC, I think it was UFC 4. I was like, that's what I'm doing for the rest of my life. Like, it was I knew that was my identity, you know, and I wanted to fight in the UFC. I wanted to be a UFC champion. Like, IBJJF, Advanced, ADCC, that was always like, okay, those are like what precedes that. So I wanted to win a gi world title. I won purple, brown, and black. I wanted to win the ADCC. I won the ADCC. After I won ADCC, I was even modifying my jiu-jitsu because I was thinking MMA. I went from open guard player to butterfly player, because that's, to me, it's the best guard in MMA is the butterfly. Like, that's the one that's going to be most efficient for offense and defense, right? So I moved to the United States. I had a total of 8 or 9 fights. Can't remember. One of them amateur, 8 pro.
This is down in Brazil.
No, this is in Vegas. This is on the U.S.
Okay.
I follow all over the place, like Canada, Texas, you know, but like all over the place. But I never fought MMA in Brazil. I was already living here. I moved here I never remember if end of 2007 or beginning of 2008. I can never remember. But and I fought MMA, and then I was 7-0 when I made it to the UFC. No, 6-0, 7-0. I can't remember, bro.
Close enough.
I won my match. I failed the drug test. And I fought one more time after that. I don't mind talking about the drug test. If people talk about steroids everywhere in jiu-jitsu days, I don't mind talking about it. But to your question, I won that match. It was a no contest because I failed the drug test. So they cut me from the UFC. And then about a year and a half later, I fought for the Legacy title, which is now LFA. They rebranded it, right? Legacy Fighting Association, whatever it is. So I fought for the title. I fought that guy, Ryan Spann. Turned out did really well in the UFC, but that was my last fight. And I won that fight. It was a very difficult camp, very difficult fight. A lot of things went wrong. I won. And I knew in my heart that was the last time I was going to fight MMA. I didn't want to do it anymore for a variety of reasons. I can give you all the reasons if you want to hear them.
I mean, this has been your goal for 10 years. You're there. Yeah. You're 8-0-1 with no contest, or 8-1, however they register the drug test with the state of Nevada. But I mean, you're there. You're doing the thing, and you just decided it was not for you.
Yes.
Did you get married? Did you have like a major injury, or you knew your heart wasn't in it?
It was not one thing. It was a very quick change of heart. It happened very quickly. I never thought it would have happened, but it happened very quickly. And I just didn't want anything to do with it anymore, man. I think it was like, I always looked at fighting, man. It was always something very personal to me, like I wanted to, I don't know, I just wanted to be good at something, When I saw it was like that drug test, man, thing. I think it was that, I had kids, so that changed me a lot. Having kids changed me a lot, because it was around the time I had kids, right? And I was watching this is the smaller reason. It's not the main reason, but it was one reason. I'm watching these guys retire, and they're not all there anymore. They're getting hit a lot. I got knocked out twice in practice. I'm knocked out, as in hit the ground, bounce back up, but where the fuck am I? That would have been a KO in a fight, right? Only twice. That's nothing in MMA. Never been knocked out in a fight. But I was watching some of these guys, and I go, this is not what I want for me when I'm older. I'm going to live to, chances are I'm going to live to 80, 90. The way it takes modern medicine is going maybe 100. Not sure that's a good thing, but, you know, here we are. So I would like to be healthy, mentally healthy, you know, as I age. And I want my daughters to be proud of me. I want my daughters to go, that's my dad, he's smart. Not that my dad, that's my dad over there, he's a little retarded, don't talk to him because he can't, you know, hold a conversation or put a sentence together. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just didn't want to be that guy that people feel sorry for because he's so beat up from fighting he can't, you know, string a sentence together. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I used to own a small boxing gym in LA.
It's terrible, man. It's terrible.
And these guys that I would look to as heroes, I won't use any of their names, but, you know, some former heavyweight champions and stuff, I had the opportunity to meet them. And the term punch drunk is the only thing that come to mind. You're talking to him and you're like, I feel like this guy is drunk. Like he can't string a sentence together. And there's no way I could ever have him on a podcast because it would just be a stuttering mess. And it's sad. It's almost sad as a fan because I know if my fan dollars didn't go to this, this is not the career they would have chosen. Yeah. And their brain is just not there.
Dude, can I send a text message really quick?
Yeah.
You cut this out.
No, it's fine. Do your thing.
I'm going to get my girl to pick up my kids because I don't think we're going to be done in the next 30.
No, this is too good.
Oh, shit, I'm on airplane mode. Okay, I'm going to have to put it off airplane mode just because I'm picking up my kids, but I'm asking my girl to do it.
Yeah, no worries.
Shouldn't be a problem.
Appreciate you coming out to film.
No, for sure. So where were we? Okay, so yeah, the getting punched drunk thing, I dislike very much the idea of aging and not being 100%, you know, there. Like I wanted my faculties to be there, sharper than ever. I want to grow to be better, not, you know, worse. Not like I didn't want that. And I remember, like, I had a friend of mine. Let me rephrase that. We have a lot of friends in common. I never met him in person, but he had a lot of friends in common. And he visited my gym once. Famous, you know, former Pride fighter, not UFC, Pride fighter, but you wouldn't know who I'm talking about. And he says something to me. We're chatting, having a friendly conversation. He says something. I'm like, oh, interesting. About 2 minutes later, he says the exact same thing, the exact same words. Tells me the same story twice. I'm like, huh, that's odd. Give another 2 minutes, he tells me the same story a third time, the exact same words. And that's when I was like, all right, yeah, I don't want that for me. You know, I honestly, man, like I didn't get dropped. I mean, there are people that got knocked out way more, they hit way more than me in practice. But, you know, I wasn't looking forward to that. So that was one reason. The other reason, I'm not made for show business. I am the opposite of Conor McGregor. Like, I'm not saying he's right or wrong. When I watch what these guys do, I don't know how to do it, and I wouldn't even if I did. If I did know how to sell a fight like that, I probably wouldn't do it anyway, right? It just goes against my internal values. But I see there's a logic to it. It has worked very well for him. If money is your purpose in life, then that is a very good strategy. He does it well. But that's the kind of guy the UFC is looking for, and I'm not like that. It's just I don't know how to do it. I'm not cut for it. And I'm just being honest with you. And the other reason, too, is like I never wanted to hurt people. Like it's not in me to, I want to knock him out and make him bleed. I'm kind of grossed out by it. Like it doesn't really, that's why I always liked jiu-jitsu. Like to me, it's just classy, man. You just win without hurting him. I think that's badass. You know, I never had that like, oh, you know, like I want to hurt someone in a fight and fuck them up. Like I would always go for the submission every opportunity. I don't even want to punch you if I don't have to. You know, I've always been attracted to that sort of, I think that's why I'm attracted to grappling maybe, because it's not in me to want to hurt people. It's not my nature. You know, so.
It's just like, it's weird hearing this, that somebody that's dedicated a quarter century of their life, basically your entire adult life, to combat sports, like, I don't really like to hurt people. It's like how do you, did that go away or how did you square that going into the cage?
The one time I knocked someone out in practice, man, I remember like just feeling awful about it. Like it just, like my heart just sunk and I just felt like absolute shit. It didn't make me feel good. It made me feel terrible. I didn't like it. And I can't give you a good reason why. It's just my nature.
So obviously you had some money from fighting, but not like, FU money. Cause there was not the big money in fighting back then. At some point you got to support yourself. Do you start opening jiu-jitsu schools? Do you go to other training camps and say, hey, I'd love to work as your grappling coach? I know you're on a couple seasons of The Ultimate Fighter as one of the grappling coaches. What's next for Drysdale after you decide, I don't want to put gloves on again?
It's funny, man. You hit the nail on the head when you asked that question. I was, your entire existence is premised on who you want to be, and overnight that changes, and you don't want to be that person anymore. I didn't like how people reacted, like I'm some kind of clown in a circus, and my dedication and my efforts were to entertain these people who don't know me. They don't know a thing about me, but they presume to know. And they want to judge me. People who have never stepped foot in the gym. They don't know what an armbar is, but they want to judge me. I didn't like that. Like, I don't have thick skin, I guess I can say. Some people have thick skin for that world. I don't. I'm like, no, fuck you. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Not for you guys. I'll do it for free. I'll do it for honor. I have to fight someone tomorrow behind closed doors like old school. I do it in a heartbeat. Say the wrong thing. We'll set a time. Francis Ngannou. Okay, I don't mind losing to Francis. I'll do it for the right reasons, but I'm not going to press conference, talk shit. It just doesn't interest me, man. I just look at that and I go, yuck. I want nothing to do with that. It's not who I am. I don't want to be that person. So, it was a bit of, okay, I'm going to be a coach then. But then, I think people have gotten softer. People have gotten softer, man. And it's hard to be because I have that mentality and I've tried to teach that. And it's very difficult because people don't want that. Most people don't. And again, I'm not, the hobbyists are fine. I'm cool with hobbyists. I can't stand the people that talk about being badass grapplers and don't have the values the discipline and the accountability and the mindset to make it there. Especially when I'm telling them what to do, right? So it's different. But that's difficult because people have, they hold themselves to very low standards and they just want to be famous. That's the thing too. It's like, I want to be famous. I want to be rich and famous. It's like, is that why you're doing this? Because you're in the wrong business, man. You should go to Hollywood, bro. You're in the wrong business. If being famous and politically powerful is your goal, go to Washington if you want politics.
Yeah.
If you want to be famous, go to Hollywood. You want to be rich, go to Silicon Valley. You're doing jiu-jitsu, man. You're a fighter. They're doing the wrong business, man. I think a lot of people in jiu-jitsu are in the wrong business. I'm not going to mention names. There's a lot of people in the wrong business. They shouldn't be fighting. It's not what you love. Clearly, it's not the most important thing to you. Because if it were, everything else would be noise. There was so that was the I forgot you're asking me about something else.
I don't know, but this takes my mind in a different way. Like for you, having coached some of these people that have made it and some of the people that have not made it, a lot more people that have probably not made it. If somebody really says, okay, I want to be in that 0.001%, I want to be a world champion, I want to be an ADCC champion, what does that look like for those people? Like if you were designing a training schedule, do they have to be 8 hours a day in the gym, 7 days a week? What does that look like to be a champion?
Anyone who tells you they're training 8 hours a day is lying to you.
Yeah, your body can't handle it.
4 is too much. If you're training hard, 2 to 3 hours max. And that's pushing it, man. And I was doing that because I'd hear about these people talking about 5-6 hours a day. And I'm like, man, how do you do that, man? And some people recover faster than others. I don't have great recovery.
Yeah, Jacare might be able to train 6 hours a day.
I remember because Forrest Griff was probably my main training partner throughout my MMA career, right? We trained, I won't say every day, but maybe 4 times a week, religiously for 5-6 years, straight. As long as he was fighting, I was fighting. We were, always training together. And he was never out of gas, I'm thinking, man, this guy must be doing something I'm not doing. So man, I'm always willing to change. So there was one time we were scheduled to fight on the same weekend. I was fighting on a Friday, he was fighting on a Saturday or something like that. And I'm going, hey man, I'm going to do my camp with you. I'm going to just follow you around. This is exactly what you do. And he goes, okay. So we're doing our camp together and we're doing the exact same things. And I'm noticing by day 3, 4, like he's a lot better. He's a lot fresher in the gym than I am. I'm like, wow, man, is this guy doing something from recovery or that I'm not doing? Like he was just recovering faster, and I'm showing up at the gym and I'm beat. And I'm just dragging myself, man. Like I might have nothing in my body, but I'm dragging myself, no days off. That's the other thing, man. Like I was severely overtrained my entire career. I didn't know it. Now I know it. Severely overtrained. You know that standard how your heart rate is racing in the morning, and that's like the number one sign of overtraining.
Yeah, that HRV.
That was almost every morning for me, man. I would go up a flight of stairs and I'm using the rail. I have my 2-year-old daughter like walking up to me. She wants me to pick her up, and I got nothing in me. I don't want to pick her up because I'm so tired. Like that was every day, 6 days a week. I took Sunday off, But it was wrong. I understand that now, but it's in my mindset. The cure to the problem was more of the problem. I'm out of shape. That's why I'm gassing out in practice. No, bro, you're severely overtrained. That was. I wish I had someone to slow me down. And I probably wouldn't have listened anyway. I don't know.
Yeah, no, youth is wasted on the young.
Yeah. So that was the MMA aspect of the career. So
we were talking about what it takes those 0.001 athletes to compete at the highest level, ADCC, things like that. Something our coach Casey talks a lot about, and it frustrates the hell out of him. And I'm wondering if you have the same opinion. He's like, jiu-jitsu has become that thing that surfing was in the 70s, skateboarding was in the 80s, rock climbing was in the 90s, where it's like you can tell your parents, oh, I'm becoming a world champion, keep supporting me. I'm not going to get a job. I'm just going to sit around and smoke weed and kind of be a loser, but I can hide behind this persona of like, I'm pretty good at jiu-jitsu. Maybe they're even excellent at jiu-jitsu, but they're hiding behind that and being like, I'm going to be a world champion one day. And then he's like, I looked at your training schedule. You ain't going to be a world champion doing that. Like, come on, man. You're sitting home playing on Instagram, smoking weed. So do you see a lot of people migrating into jiu-jitsu that like had that skateboarder culture, that surf culture, and they're just hiding?
Yeah, that's spot on. That's spot on my experience. And it's funny because it's popular now, so you don't know who's who. If you're from my generation or before, you're there for one reason only. You love the art as an end in itself. There's not a means to an end because there's no end.
Right.
You're going to be broke.
If you were the best in the world, you made $10,000 a year every 2 years.
Amaury Bitachi. You know who that is?
No.
2-time open weight champion.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Now, he won in 96, 97, I believe. At one point, he was the number one jiu-jitsu player in the world. But it was at a time where there was no professional events. There were no sponsors. I mean, sponsors, you get like, board shorts and a gi or something. That was a sponsorship. I'm not even joking here, man. My first sponsor gave me like, I think 3 gis a year. And that was like, yes, I'm winning. I don't have to buy gis anymore. That was a win. So things have changed a lot. But Mike, it's drawn a lot of people that are in it for the wrong reasons. Going back to that, people they're in it because they see it as an identity and a means to an end. They're looking at jiu-jitsu as a trampoline to something else. And my experience of those guys, if they're very gifted, they make it close to the top. They work hard, but they don't have that extra ingredient to make that next level. You know what I'm talking about? Like maybe they'll make it as an ADCC veteran at the most, but they're not going to get on that podium. Because once they start getting to that 0.0001%, like it's the way you think that's going to make a difference, man. It's like every little decision in your life, like every aspect of your personal life. It's accumulation of all these things. It's a game of inches at that level. You understand? And like some people, even if they're very gifted, they're doing jiu-jitsu because they're thinking, what can jiu-jitsu give me? And that's the wrong way of thinking. You understand? It's you're already on the wrong track. There's no end. It's just it's an end in itself. And once you start thinking about it that way, I think you start, upholding the right values, the necessary values to be on the right track, to become that, top 0.0001% kind of thing, right? But yeah, I think that's spot on. There's a lot of people that are just in it for the identity and, I'm going to get some followers and get to hang out with cool. And there's nothing wrong with that, I suppose. But I think we should draw a distinction between the hobbyists and the athletes. It's not the same. Like they're two different worlds coexisting, man. That's the real problem. And it's not something, I don't think there's a solution because it is a commercial setting unless you have enough means. Like some of these big teams like Alliance, Gracie, they can do things like that. Or we're going to have a facility because they have so much money they can do that. I'm going to have a facility here and we're going to have, they're hiring people now. It's like they're turning into like professional teams. I dislike that. I think that's an awful path for jiu-jitsu. It's terrible that people have been thinking that. This is not going to end well. I don't like it. I think it's just wrong on so many different levels. You're just hiring people. Like, what is that?
They're like hiring people away from other gyms.
Yes, they're giving them money. Like that's what's happening at this point.
So, I work in mortgages. I'm an extreme capitalist libertarian. And so balancing those two thoughts of like, if you could wave a magic wand and you could keep the distinction and the tradition and the, just the ethos of what you think of jiu-jitsu, but also like, I want people to get paid, right? Like, is there a way to balance those two things, or does the money corrupt it?
Yes, it is a balance, man. I'm not disputing, like, it's good that people make money, man. I like money too. I'm just thinking, like, you know, if you're like, imagine you're a musician and you're going to sell out to the label company, and they're going to you to produce a record that you despise. It's not who you are. It's not your soul. It's not your art. But you're going to make millions, and you're going to be famous. You're going to be like a sensation. Like, would you? It's a question. It's a good question. Like, I don't know. What's the right thing to do? Like, I like to think that I wouldn't. Like, I love my art for what it is. And I'm not rich by no means, but I make more than I need, man. Like, I don't share on this obsession. Like, I was just having this conversation with a friend of mine, like, not too long ago. I'm like on a plane. I fly economy. Like, it doesn't bother me. I'm 6'3", but it never bothered me. Like, I've flown business before. Barely makes a difference. I'm uncomfortable no matter what, you know? So it's like, okay. And I'm flying to this aluminum tube through space. And I'm like, man, I love history. So you know a little about like what life was like 10,000 years ago, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm
200 years ago is fucking miserable.
Years ago. And
half the kids died of
myself,
dysentery.
And I'm going to myself, I'm flying through the Atlantic on inside an aluminum tube. And if Julius Caesar could see me right now, he would swap places with me. Emperor of Rome would swap places with me in a heartbeat. If an Egyptian pharaoh saw my cell phone, he would go, I will trade my pyramids with you in a heartbeat. You know what I'm saying? Like, think about that, like how lucky and privileged we are. And you're like, oh, I need 8 houses. I'm like, oh, because you need, how many houses do you need to live in, bro? Like, I'm not saying, yeah, sure. I'm not saying you shouldn't strive to grow. I just think it's odd that it's almost like every other metric is put as a secondary thought behind your financial success. Like, is that really like the most? I mean, it's not saying it's not important, but again, a hierarchy of purposes. Like, what is? Because I think that as far as jiu-jitsu goes, if you're thinking that way, it's the wrong direction. Like, as coaches, we should be looking at something else. As a fighter, you should be looking at something else. You have to be looking at other things. Like, what is it that is important here? You know, so I do balance these things out. Like, I think I struck that balance in my life. I make more than I need. Okay? I make more than I need. I don't make nearly as much as some of these guys made, but like, I don't need a private jet, bro. I think that's so overrated. Like, I have a pool and I'm trying to get rid of it. A money pit, man. I have a pool in my backyard. I'm like, I wish I didn't have a pool. I don't need it. My daughter's swimming it like twice a year. That's a very expensive hobby. $150 to clean this pool a month, and they're swimming in it. So I don't need a pool. Why would I need it? Imagine having a yacht. It sounds like a pain in the butt. Think about it. Like, do you really need that? I don't. Like, so, you know, when people are talking about, oh, you know, we need to, you know, make jiu-jitsu professional so these guys get paid. I'm like, they're not struggling, bro. If I'm not struggling, I know these guys are winning. If I'm not struggling, I know they're not struggling because I know they're making more than me. So I think at some point it's just like this fanatical, obsessive greed, and it's nothing to do with, you know, what's best for jiu-jitsu. Or I think it's just weird that we start thinking that way. You know, I think there's a balance for sure, but I think it's strange that this has become like the biggest, most important topic in jiu-jitsu is these fighters are getting paid. I'm like, dude, they're getting paid way more than my generation did, and we're fine. It's not like these guys are struggling, bro.
Yeah.
I heard some of these guys are making $1 million a year on BJJ Fanatics. I'm like, bro, come on. And you're talking to like, you're struggling, we got to survive. I'm like, you live in the richest country in history, right? You've never seen poverty. I have no idea what poverty looks like. I have to remind Americans of this all the time. All the time. You have never seen it.
Because in Brazil, there is real poverty.
I was never poor, but I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've seen it up close. Children begging for food. Yeah. Like dirt floor, open sewer, no electricity. Yeah, I've seen these things. So when people are talking about, I need more here, I'm almost like disgusted by them. It's like, dude, you have no idea how lucky you are. Like, think about like just how privileged we are in this country. We get so good here, man. So good. We have people crossing the border with children on their back to live in the promised land. regardless of what you think of immigration, just think about the effort. As a human, you put your, say, 2-year-old daughter on your back, and you're going to walk across the desert for 20 days. You may well die. She might get eaten by coyotes. And you're doing that so you can live here. And I have to listen to these kids that walk around in Japanese pajamas for a living, complaining about not having enough. You have to put things in perspective, right?
Yeah.
We're just so out of touch with reality. So out of touch with reality. We're good. We're good. There's no need to sell out. There's no need to corrupt. There's no need to go down this path. Oh, more entertainment. Really? Is that why you're doing jiu-jitsu? We have arguments at the gym sometimes about what kind of music we're going to listen to and what volume it's going to be at. I'm like, who cares? I didn't even have music for most of my training. I'm here for jiu-jitsu. I mean, I like music in the background, but I don't care what kind of music's playing. About classical for all I care. You know, like it's not important. It's odd that people have like, it's like jiu-jitsu is not enough for them. And that's why to me, it's almost like they're doing it. That to me is a sign that they're doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. You know, you've gotten some flack because you've dove deep into the history of jiu-jitsu. Your book, Opening Closed Guard, and I know that there's like a second version of the book, right? I got the wrong one on Audible I'm listening to or something.
That's Rise and Evolution of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Rise and Evolution. Can you talk a little bit through writing that book, like what you found was kind of just urban legend and lore? And I know you've gotten a lot of flack over people thinking maybe you're anti-Gracie or something like that because you've just brought like more of a historically accurate timeline of jiu-jitsu out to people in modern day. Can you talk a little bit why, if you gotta take that, no big deal. Can you talk a little bit about why you went on that journey of trying to understand more about the history of jiu-jitsu and then what the pros and cons of being that figurehead for that mission has been?
I always like to tell, I'm not a historian. I have a bachelor's degree in history. I started a master's program. I absolutely hated academia. It's not for me. I don't like it. Anyway, long story. But the guy who's done the heavy lifting is this guy called Roberto Pedreira. Like I'm not like, people give me the credit for being a historian. Like I've done some digging. I mean, I don't mind giving myself credit for what I did do, and I did do something, but I would hate to give myself credit for what I didn't do because I didn't earn it. And this guy has done the heavy lifting as far as the research goes, right? It's all on Amazon.
And what's his name?
Roberto Pedreira. He's an American. It's a pseudonym, but he's an American scholar. Shocky, Craze, The Evolution of Modern Jiu-Jitsu. Read his books. They're heavy reads, but they're worth reading. I had a different angle. I wanted to talk about the cultural differences, the changes that we're talking about. I wanted to use oral tradition, which is complicated because people lie and forget. Long story short, right? Like this is like a heated topic in academia, whether we should take oral accounts as accurate or not. Like let's say the account of a refugee, for example. How accurate is it? So you can be a victim and a liar. They're not mutually exclusive. A refugee is likely to lie because he hates his enemy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they just got my home blown to pieces. How many people did they rape? 100? Yes, 100. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Like people lie because they have political allegiances.
Right.
We're not immune to that. No one is. So people lie and distort. And we have accounts of some of these guys going, like you have an interview in the 40s and they're saying one thing. In the 80s, they're saying something else. In the 2000s, they're saying, it's like a third account of the same question. So they're changing because their politics are changing. Their allegiances are changing, you understand? So, but I used it because I think there's some value in it. I wanted to color history with some personal accounts. So I added the interviews, my own perspective as a competitor, as a coach, as someone who is bicultural. I'm not American, I'm not Brazilian, I'm both. I lived the evolution in Brazil in the late 90s, the evolution of jiu-jitsu in Brazil in the late 90s. I saw it blow up in the United States from being a marginal martial art, and most people had no idea what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was in the early 2000s, to being like mainstream. Like every celebrity in Hollywood is obsessed with it. Like I watched all that up close. So I wanted to give that perspective. I was never concerned with picking a fight. I knew I would, but it was not my concern. Like I was just a side effect. Like I don't, to me, like I hate using the word truth because it's such a big word, but like reality is what it is. I mean, you can, if it hurts your feelings, it's not reality that has a problem. It's your feelings have a problem. It's your feelings that need to adjust to reality, not the other way around. And I think that some people have an emotional attachment to certain narratives because they've been so invested in that narrative. It's like challenging their identity. You understand? Like, what do you mean Helio Gracie wasn't weak? No, he was actually a very successful swimmer. He was in an elite rowing team in his youth. He was not a weak person. He was a very good athlete. I mean, maybe line was necessary to get jiu-jitsu to help, because, you know, you're not going to sell a martial art in America if you have some juiced up meathead from Brazil beating someone up in a vale tudo cage. But if you have a skinny guy in a gi and his dad, you know, was the guy who created leverage and invented, you know, techniques for the weak guy to defeat the strong, that's a selling point.
Right.
And it works. It did work. And I'm thankful for it. But maybe because it's, you know, we were past the point where it matters, I think it's easier to talk about these things. It's not true. It's not true. Like, Helio was not weak. They did not invent leverage. Like, please, you know, like, he did not invent the guard. Like, there's a lot of things. And I'm not picking on the guy. He had his role. I have no issues giving these guys credit for what they did do. And they did do something. They did do something very important. I make a living from it. I am obsessed with this world that they helped create, right? So I'm not, you know, in Portuguese they have this expression, cuspiu no prato que comeu, to spit on the plate you ate from. I get accused by Brazilians of that all the time. So in America, I'm an anti-American. All the time I get accused of that. And in Brazil, I'm anti-Brazilian. Don't get me.
Just a dude with no home.
Yeah, but it's just not. It's not nothing to do with. It's sometimes I see people arguing like, you know, American Jiu-Jitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and they're posting all these the flag, Brazilian flag, and then the American goes the American flag. And I'm like, this has nothing to do with patriotism. Like, what are you guys talking about? I'm talking about Jiu-Jitsu here, when somehow like the conversation just completely sidetracked.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, people are tribal, right? It's like if you believe in the legend of Helio Gracie started jiu-jitsu and he learned it from this Japanese guy who learned it from a samurai, and they were the first ones to figure out leverage. Like, that's a sexy narrative, right? That's a movie. That's a movie I want to believe in.
And honestly, I think the true history, again, I just like, you know, I'm not supposed to be using the word truth and true, but I think the real history is far more interesting than the official narrative. Far more interesting. I fell in love when I started reading about this through Pedrero's books. I'm like, man, this is so much better than I thought. This is way cooler.
So walk us through like your current reality of like, you know, give us the cliff notes of 100 years of jiu-jitsu going from Japan to Brazil to America.
What we practice would be more accurately called Brazilian Judo. It's a variation of Judo. There's no way around that. Mitsui Maeda / Konji Koma is a marginal figure in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu history. Some people get mad when I say this, like, what did he actually do? Like, he had 5 Brazilian students, okay? None of them were Carlos Gracie. One of these students trained Carlos Gracie for a little while. Carlos Gracie was a beginner. When he first started his fighting in São Paulo, he was a beginner. Nothing wrong with that. We're all beginners at some point, you know. But the Gracies were not trained in the 1920s. I mean, according to Helio Gracie himself, Helio Gracie's own words, he had never heard of jiu-jitsu up to 1929. Okay, so that 1925 date, it's wrong. Okay, he had never heard of jiu-jitsu up to 1929. They were doing a variation of judo. It was not what we practice today. It was self-defense oriented, private lessons, no group classes. This is very important. This is a very important piece of the history, right? In the 1950s, there were still judokas. We see this clearly in the rule set. 1954 rule set. They have ippon, wazari, and osaikomi. 1954.
I don't know what any of that means.
That's judo language. That's the judo. Ippon ends the fight. Osaikomi is when I hold you down for 30 seconds. Wazari is an imperfect ippon, almost ippon. Okay, that was in their rule set, 1954. 1967, they removed the osaikomi, the 30-second pin. They removed the imperfect takedown, right? 1 point for mount, 1 point for back take. You see an evolution there, right? 1975, that's I would argue, that's when what we call Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was truly born, the 1975 rule set. Because in 1975, what happened was they have a rule set, I call it the progression paradigm, where you're advancing positions towards a place where in a real fight you could do damage and you could potentially finish. That's why you're getting 4 for mount. So back in the day, you got 2 for the takedown, 2 for the pass, 3 for a knee on belly, 4 for mount, 4 for the back, right? Then they switched. Right now it's 3 for the pass, 2 for a knee on belly. But they removed. It's very interesting. Like, you can see how their mindset completely changed from 54 to 75, because in 54 they're giving you a point for a osaikomi. You get 1 point for holding someone down for 30 seconds. In 1975, fast forward 21 years, now you're getting penalized for the exact same thing. So you can see their interpretation of what jiu-jitsu was flipped 180 in between 54 and 75. Completely different interpretation. In 54, you're being rewarded for holding someone down for 30 seconds. In 75, you're penalized. You understand what's happening? The rule is heavily influenced by MMA. A lot of people pick on the point system, right? Because it's not real for a fight. I would argue that is more real than a non-point system, because in a fight, you have to learn how to control position. The inspiration is MMA. Now, you can argue that there are flaws with their way of thinking, but again, these guys are fighting MMA in the 1950s, 60s at a time where Neon Belly against the Capoeira was a great finishing position. Now, you don't see people finishing with strikes from Neon Belly in the UFC because everyone knows how to grapple. But if you're going against a striker that has no idea how to shrimp, then yeah, Neon Belly is a great finishing position, right? So they're rewarding points because that's a striking position. So it's influenced by MMA. It's not the only aspect of MMA or slash volley 2 that has made its way into jiu-jitsu rule set. It's just one of them. But you can clearly see that these guys had a concern for the reality of combat. In the 1970s, there's this key figure in jiu-jitsu history called Carlson Gracie. Very few people know about him because he was awful at marketing and he didn't care about it. He was in love for jiu-jitsu as an end in itself. He wasn't worried about money or fame or popularity. He was worried about getting the job done and doing it well. I think he's the most important figure in this whole story. This is the guy that, first of all, opened up for people to train jiu-jitsu regardless of social status. So the Gracie Academy was focused on teaching privates to wealthy individuals, right? Politicians, actors, military, people that had influential positions in Brazilian society. Carlson says, you know what, if you want to train, I don't even care how much money. In fact, you don't even have to pay as long as you train hard. He opens up to group classes. Group classes did not exist before Carlson Gracie, okay? This is the guy. Now, how do you have evolution in a martial art without competition? In a private lesson setting where you're training self-defense, where's the evolution? There's no outlet. There's no competition. There's no friction. There's no arms race. You understand? Carlson Gracie creates the environment for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to evolve. So much so that you see, the variety of techniques that, we're so proud of this variety. This started in his gym in the 70s. That's when it starts expanding. That's when you start seeing people do more and more techniques. As the competition grows, so do the quality and sophistication of the techniques. But that world was, the blueprint of that world was created by him. He also changes jiu-jitsu dramatically from a cultural perspective. It goes from a private lesson, self-defense, rich individual environment, very militaristic, very descriptive of Helio's own personality, to a beach-like environment. Flip-flops, acai after practice. You can show up 5 minutes late. It's okay. You can sit, skip warm-up and bullshit on the edge of the mats while you calmly tape your fingers and have a chat with your friend. You sit on the mats after class, drenched in sweat, and have a good chat with your friends. It's a bro kind of beach surf environment. That was one of the reasons why jiu-jitsu blew up. It's not the technique. The techniques are all old. They exist in catch. They exist in Kosen judo. They exist in sambo. It's not the techniques. Right? There's a certain technical freedom to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that some of these martial arts lack. You can argue that. But I strongly believe that the cultural aspect was the key factor for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu's success around the world. You see this when you go to Japan, you see when you go to Russia, you go to any place in the world, and you see Rio de Janeiro inside those places. You see Rio de Janeiro traveling the world. It's Brazilian culture. It's straight up out of Rio. You have to live or experience Rio to understand what I'm talking about. Like, that is descriptive of what we call Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu culture, the lifestyle, right? The camaraderie, the relaxed manners. It's very unusual in martial arts. Like, you look at judo, for example, it's very different.
It's like very regimented.
It's like going to church.
Yeah.
It's like going to church.
Yeah. Same with all, karate was obviously big when I was growing up in the 80s, but it's like you go there's the katas, you do the thing, you bow every time you get on the mat. And it's like, I don't know a jiu-jitsu class in the world that starts on time, which drives me nuts because I'm like a punctual Peter. And it's just a laid back beach culture, like you said.
But if you work a 9 to 5 and you got stuck in traffic, you don't want to get yelled at when you get to the gym.
Right. You
don't want to coach with a bamboo sword beating you in the leg and say you're not allowed to enter the mats because you're 5 minutes late. You want to be able to hug your friends, show up 5 minutes late and then grab an acai with them after practice. That's very Brazilian. So when people talk like, oh, Brazilians didn't invent jiu-jitsu, that's true. It's not, no one invents anything in martial arts. They're just borrowing and adapting and changing, right? The same goes for judo. But they add in, and I think this was Brazil's contribution to jiu-jitsu, was adding the best of what Brazil had to offer in terms of that sort of lifestyle, relaxed manner. That's very Brazilian. You understand? Like improvising. Brazil, you think people in Brazil plan a barbecue? They get together on a Saturday morning. What are we doing today? Let's grill. Okay, meet me in my house in 1 hour. You show up there to be 20 strangers at your house grilling already. And it's just how they roll, man. It's just improvise, everyone's family, you know. And it's. I'm not saying everything about it is good, you know, but I think what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu succeeded in doing is bringing to the forefront some of the best aspects of Brazilian culture and being. And it's difficult for people to grasp this because they take it for granted that things are the way they are. But they are that way because a guy called Carlson, Gracie, insisted in creating that sort of environment for his students. And if you look at every successful jiu-jitsu school in the world, they trace their lineage directly back to that environment. And if not the exact, like, oh, my coach does not go back to that lineage. Yeah, but your coach changed the way he taught class somewhere along the 1980s to mimic Carlson Gracie's model because it was a better model. It is the model that took over the world. What we call Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu now was born inside that building. And he didn't get the credit for it because he had one son, you know, didn't have a Jorge and Gracie, didn't have his story told, his own family, not all of them, but many of them kind of like my favorite quote in the book comes from Carlson Gracie's son, Carlson Gracie Jr. And he goes like this: you ever watch that movie, The Lion King? And then when everyone mentions the name Mufasa, everyone just runs in fear? It's the same with my father. And I'm like, man, spot on. It's exactly how it is. Because when you talk about, and a lot of them give him his credit, but a lot of them, when you say Carlson Gracie and like in the certain like hardcore Gracie circles, they're like,
don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, they don't like to give him a credit.
And so who brings it to America?
Because he was the black sheep. You understand? He was the one that insisted that they open it up to become what it is today. We have to open it up to everyone. And this is how we have to competitive format, group classes, bra mentality, chill, relaxed manners. It was the opposite of the Gracie Academy. What we call Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, people get mad at me, but like, I think that what we call Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was not born in the Gracie Academy. It was born inside Carlson Gracie's academy. And he was fully aware of this distinction. When he says, don't confuse Gracie Jiu-Jitsu with Carlson Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, he's fully aware of the distinction. I would even argue that the split, the process of diversification that Jiu-Jitsu underwent under Carlson was even more radical, or at least as radical as the one the Gracie Academy underwent with Judo in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. You understand? It was a very radical. Now, Carlson doesn't change the name. He continues to use the word Jiu-Jitsu. But for all practical purposes, he's doing something completely different. Culturally, methodologically, technically, it's practically a different martial art. It is what we call Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu today. There's no way around it. But the story wasn't told.
So how do all these dudes land in Southern California?
It's the closest thing to Rio. And that's one reason. The other reason is it's modern Rome. You know, everyone knows this. If you want to be someone in the world, I mean, I joke around, but when the end of the world begins, or Armageddon begins, it will start in California.
I agree.
It's how's that Red Hot Chili Peppers song goes?
Yeah.
The edge of the world and all of Western civilization, right?
Yeah.
Californication. So
they go there, and you know, I walked into a jiu-jitsu studio 99, 2000, Fabiano Aya, who was one of the first UFC champions when they split the weight classes. He was a littler guy.
I remember.
I went in there for a couple months, and he heard that I wrestled in high school. I was a mediocre wrestler, but I was probably 180, 190 pounds. And he's like, hey, man, I'll give you a free membership if you show up on Saturday and wrestle with me because I just need a bigger guy. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. And instead of teaching me for like 3 months, he just beat the fuck out of me every Saturday.
That's how they teach him.
Because I didn't know anything about jiu-jitsu. And so this guy just ran through me over and over and over again. And then I quit. I didn't come back to it for 20-something years. But so they all land in Southern California. And is it really just as simple as the UFC? You know, Gracie goes out there and beats a bunch of big dudes that like brought it to modern popularity? Or is this just something that correlates with a legend versus the reality is it kind of already spread to the United States. There was already, you know, McDojos on every corner. Or is it really that UFC 1 through 5 that brings jiu-jitsu into the forefront?
I think that things were heating up in Brazil prior to the UFC. Right? Like there was a new generation of jiu-jitsu practitioners because jiu-jitsu was very small in Brazil. A lot of people don't know this, but even in Rio de Janeiro, most people had never heard of the Gracie family in the 90s, prior to Royce Gracie. We have multiple people from Rio de Janeiro I said, dude, I had never heard of jiu-jitsu prior to Royce.
Yeah, this is not part of the legend, right? The legend is every kid in Rio does jiu-jitsu, and
I never heard. I mean, if your grandpa might have heard of him, because there was a moment there when Helio fought Kimura. That was a big moment in the press, but that was 1951, bro. I mean, how many events from 1951 do we remember in this country? Like, it just, if people forget, it was not mainstream. So there was a moment there, 91, with the Luta Livre versus Jiu-Jitsu challenge. Right, they had 3 Luta Livre representatives fight 3 Jiu-Jitsu representatives. It was on national television in Brazil, which is rare because there was a lot of flack, a lot of resistance towards MMA in Brazil throughout the 70s and 80s. I mean, they organized a Vale Tudo in 1991 on national television, on Globo, which is the biggest TV channel in Brazil. It's like MMA on primetime CNN. 1991. It's unthinkable. They did it
because I've heard in Brazil over the last 100 years they've kind of fallen. I mean, obviously it's all mainstream now, but for a lot of times they fell in and out of love with MMA. It was like, no, kind of like what we went through here, right? With Senator McCain being like, this is human cockfighting. This isn't respectable.
You know what's funny about Brazilians in this regard, and I'm half Brazilian, so I can say this, and I love Brazil, so I'm not attacking, but there's something it's hard to explain, man. Like, if you mention Vale Tudo, if your girlfriend introduced you to her parents as a jiu-jitsu or Vale Tudo fighter in the late 90s, her parents would have been like, ugh, not him.
Yeah.
You know? And then when Americans accepted it, all of a sudden, Anderson Silva and Vanderlei Silva and Minotauro, all those guys overnight, Paulo Filho, overnight, they're heroes. And I'm like, man, what's wrong with you people? What's wrong with you guys? You guys invented this, man. You guys created this. The whole world, like in the 30s, 40s, these guys went pro wrestling, circus. You guys went reality. You guys went the opposite direction of pro wrestling. Because it was born in the same world. 1930s, submission grappling was huge. You know, events, Roberto Pedreiro writes this in one of his books. We have events in California with arenas sold out 10,000 people.
Seeing like catch wrestling, stuff like this.
During the Great Depression. In today's money, $47,000 plus in prize money. Okay, it's huge. But it drifted into pro wrestling. That's what pro wrestling finds its origins, right? It didn't start fake. Brazilians went kind of the opposite direction. Let's make this real, right? And they invented Vale Tudo. All right? Brazilians are not, they're disgusted by it. This is gross. This is disgusting. You guys are animals. What is this? What is this? And then all of a sudden, Dana White makes it blow up in the U.S. Americans approve it. Oh, we're proud of Brazil. What happened? All of us, like overnight, Brazilians accepted MMA. It was the strangest thing in the world. No, I'll give you another one. They accepted the change of names. It went from Vale Tudo to MMA, just like that. You know what an American would accept? That they had invented something, and then some Brazilians are going to get along. We're not going to call it MMA anymore. We're going to call it Vale Tudo.
Oh yeah, if Brazilians tried to rebrand, baseball, the American pastime, to stickball, we would it would
be laughable.
Yeah,
like no one would take them seriously. Americans did it just like that, and Brazilians accepted it. And I can't understand these things. I can't understand.
I mean, that kind of speaks to the marketing genius of the Gracie family and the marketing genius of the UFC. I mean, I know that organization didn't turn a profit for the first, pick a number, 20, 25, 30 events, but like their marketing prowess obviously
phenomenal.
Is phenomenal.
Look, none of this would have worked without Rorion. He gets a bad rep because people don't like him. I don't know him, but his own family, a lot of people don't like him, but.
What did he do? What was his
He's a guy that sued his own cousin, Carlson, to use the name Gracie in the mid-90s. That's why the term Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu started being used because of that, because people were scared of using Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. No one in Brazil called it Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, by the way, but there was a lot of schools that were still teaching, like Jiu-Jitsu is a broad word. It doesn't really mean anything, but it's to distinguish from other styles of Jiu-Jitsu, Jiu-Jitsu, whatever. They wanted to call it Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, but Rorion wanted a monopoly over the name, so he sues his cousin. Well, but this is, you can look this up. Like this,
sounds like my family.
And but at the end of the day, man, if it weren't for him, we wouldn't be here. But again, you could argue. I think there's a part of Pedro's book. He said something like, "It's like the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs." You wouldn't call it a good thing, but we wouldn't be here if we're not for that. Right? It's like you can't go like that was a great thing, that asteroid, But it's like, yeah, but if it weren't for that, we wouldn't be here now. So that's kind of how I look at some of these things now. Like they were necessary, but and But he was the marketing genius. Like this guy, you got to give him his credit, man. This guy's handing out flyers in parking lots in the 1980s in California, trying to get people to show up to his garage to roll around with a bunch of like, you know, Latino guys in Japanese gis. Like it's not an easy sell. Right. Think about it. But he was used to that because it was a nightmare to sell this in Brazil too. It was a hustle. Like they were used to being people not believing in them. It was part of like the belief, man, that those people had in what they were doing. I applaud it. It's like, man, what faith in what they were doing, that this was going to blow up one day. You understand? I admire it, man. I don't always admire how they did certain things, but what they did, I think, is incredible. And I think they don't get the credit for their resistance. Like, you know, imagine you're running a business, right? And for 40 years, like no one's interested. 40 years.
Most people don't make it 4 years.
4 months, bro. People are quitting. 40 years. They're doing it. No one in Brazil is paying attention. No one in the world is paying attention. For 40 years, they stuck to their vision. One day, this is going to blow up. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. The more you think about it, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, you know, I'm talking about like inventing leverage. Like, how interesting is that compared to this? Like, these guys stuck to their worldview of their understanding of things. This is what real combat looks like for 40 years. So then, granted, it changed in those 4 years. It's not the exact same thing, but the vision that it was something was going to happen. Like they stuck to that. That at one point didn't know exactly where they were going, but something was going to happen. Rorion is the guy that opened that up to the world. I think jiu-jitsu was blowing up in Brazil in the 90s, even without the UFC. It was slowly growing, but it wouldn't be nowhere near where it is today had it not been for Rorion, the UFC, and Royce Gracie. Those guys, that was like that's the ideal billboard, right? It doesn't get better than that.
Yeah.
You know?
So when we think about, because, you know, the UFC is obviously the 800-pound gorilla in the room now. Like anybody who's doing jiu-jitsu for combat purposes probably has this dream of fighting and getting into the UFC, getting into Bellator or something like that. How has modern jiu-jitsu been adapted for the cage, for fighting, right? Because, like, I can't stall in deep half if somebody can punch me in the head.
It's devolved. We went backwards.
Really?
100%. 100%. You know, like, it's funny when you're talking about modern competitors, they think they're so smart. They're always patting themselves on the back, you know, like for things they didn't do. Like they're standing on the shoulders of giants and they think the giants are short because they're taller than them. You know, they forget like there's a lot of work that went behind this, you know. But for example, like let's say someone comes up with like a shin to shin sweep. They're like, oh, those guys in the 80s were dumb. They didn't know. They couldn't figure this out on their own. It's like, no, because once a week, those guys would train jiu-jitsu with slaps. You know what would happen if you went deep half guard when slaps are involved? You're going to stop playing deep half guard. Now, what's interesting is that this was never in the rule set. The rule set never said no deep half guard or shin to shin. But there was what I call a cultural buffer there to prevent that from occurring. You get checked. So if you did something that wouldn't work in a fight, once a week they train with slaps. And they're like, smack you in the ear. Don't do that. It's not going to work in a fight. There was a concern for the reality of combat. In the 90s, that died. I lived the very end of that. I did that once where we trained with slaps. We took our jackets off, open-handed MMA, like pancrase. I did that once when I was like 17. But I caught the very end of that era, right? In the 90s, it died. But this was common practice in the 80s in Brazil. That's how they trained. They didn't train jiu-jitsu for competition. They trained jiu-jitsu to fight. It was a very different mentality. We abandoned that concern, you know, for a variety of reasons. I don't think any one individual or organization or any, you know, event is to blame. I think the world changed. The world doesn't accept. I mean, is it a commercial practice to have your kid get smacked in the ear once a week? Like, would you? I mean, probably not, right?
Right.
It would probably help them as far as real fighting goes, but it's not something parents don't want to see their kids get hit. Simple as that, right? Causes all sorts of liability issues. Like, it's not. I mean, we're living in a different time, man. So. And the other thing, too, and someone made this point the other day, people don't fight anymore. When I was a kid, we were fighting every other week. I mean, if you went like a year without fighting, it was unusual.
Yeah.
I remember like adults would watch and like as long as no one was getting hurt, they wouldn't even stop the fight.
Right.
They just let it go. As long as the kids aren't getting hurt, they kind of let it go, you know?
Yeah. I caught the tail end of that in the 80s. Yeah. In elementary school, it was very common to have fights on the playground. And I'm sure some school district got sued. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, if you raise your hand to somebody, you're suspended for a week. Or, you know, we're going to bring your parents in here to beat the shit out of you.
But that was exactly it, man. And you know, it's changed. Like, you know, people don't fight anymore now. Everyone here in this country carries a gun. Everyone's carrying a gun. The police is more or less efficient. The law is pretty much, if you fight in Brazil, you may or may not get arrested. Here you get in trouble, man. It goes on your record.
Yeah.
So I'm terrified of getting into a fight because if I hurt someone, I'm in big trouble.
Yeah, you're done.
Exactly. I mean, I get eaten alive in a courtroom, so I don't mess around with that, you know. So it's like, what is, you know, that's to the point of the next book I'm working on. What is the purpose of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? It's a good question. It's not as simple. I don't think it's an easy question to answer. I don't have a great answer. I have my own answers, but I don't think this is an easy thing to answer. Like, 'cause the self-defense thing kind of like, really? I mean, a gun is it's much better self-defense than jiu-jitsu. I mean, is it healthy? I don't think it's healthy. Look at me. I'm destroyed. There are days I use the rail to go up a flight of stairs because my knees hurt too much. I got no cartilage left in my knees, like zero. You know, everything hurt. I can't squat.
Do you worry about some of the kids that you see coming in at a young age, competing at a high level, doing it through their teenage years? Like, I think about this sometimes with my kids where I'm like, ooh, I think jiu-jitsu is really good for them. And ooh, are they going to be pissed off after I die if their knees are shot or their shoulders are shot at 40 years old?
I don't regret it. I have zero regrets. I mean, speaking for myself, I don't know other people, how they'll feel. I'm 43. I feel like I'm 70 sometimes. Like, I train. I can't go to war anymore. I had to change how I train, where it's trying to win. Now I'm just trying to move. If I can be actively moving the whole time and not get injured, I call that a win, you know? So it's changed a lot in that regard. But it's I don't regret it. Like, I think you only gotta be young once. You know, you gotta exhaust your youth, man. Get the most out of it. It drives me crazy when, like, I see 20-year-olds are just like not working out, doing anything. This is the best version of you right now. In 20 years, it's not going to be there anymore, bro. Like, what are you doing? Like, I think sports should be like almost like mandatory, man. Like, I don't buy this. Like, oh, you don't have to work out, do sport. Like, no, like, you have to. It's part of growing up, man. It's part of being a human. It's working out. You don't have to hunt. You don't have to fish. You don't have to swim across a river anymore. You don't have to climb a mountain. Like, you have to go to the gym then. You have to replace that because that's who you are. You understand? It's part of your nature to work out, like to break a sweat. But yeah, sure, you get older. You know, things change. But I don't think I'll ever stop. I'm just trying. I'm taking the foot off the gas because I'm hoping to be on the mats till the day I die. So it's like a car, right? You only put so many miles on it. So I'm trying to, like, you know, have an economy of miles here, so I can have some longevity in jiu-jitsu, which I think I can. Like, I was talking to Gracie Jr. when I was, you know, interviewing for the second book, and he was 67 at the time, and he says he trains 4 or 5 days a week. I think that's incredible. That's incredible. Like, that's a win. If I can make it to 67, still training like almost every day, you know. But it's hard because, I mean, everyone's different, I suppose. But my body hurts a lot, man. I complain a lot about pain, but I'm in pain the entire time I'm training. Whereas before, I got a lot of pleasure out of it with a little bit of pain. Now I get a lot of pain with a little bit of pleasure. And it's almost like an internal war to force myself on the mats because I just want to be on the mats, but my body doesn't. You understand? Like, your mind does, but your body's totally like, F that. My body's like, no more.
Dude, having started this journey at 40 years old, there's a lot of things that I see that I'm like, oh, I should do that in the moment. And I'm like, oh, but my body can't do that. Like, I wish I would have stuck with this 20 years ago just to have a better fluidity of motion. What do you see as, like, the good and the bad of the future of jiu-jitsu? Or if you're looking out 5, 10, 20 years, what encourages you? Like, what are you seeing that you're like, oh, I like this trajectory? And what are you seeing that you're like, I mean, we touched on it a little bit, that you're terrified for the sport that you love so much?
I dislike, I mean, who am I? I mean, it's my own opinion, man.
Yeah,
like, I don't.
That's why we're here.
Maybe I'm not. Maybe, you know, who's to say what's right and wrong? If going to jiu-jitsu in a certain way, training a certain way, or looking at things in a certain way works for you, makes you happy, to each their own. You know, I'm at an age where I've kind of given up on changing people's minds. Like, I'm just going to give you my opinion because you asked. I dislike this route of entertainment. I don't think it's a good route. Going back to what happened to catch wrestling. Catch wrestling did everything we do before us. Much older. Catch wrestling is medieval. It's much older than judo. It's much older than anything else, right? But I think they went the wrong route when it comes to like just that world that existed in the 1930s being so concerned with selling tickets. You have to raise the bar. Once you start feeding the mob like entertainment, you can't go down. You can't go back. You got to raise the bar. So next CGI, what is Craig Jones going to do? I like Craig. I have nothing against Craig. I think he's hilarious. He can be a comic and he's just fine. Like every time he posts something, I'm cracking up.
Yeah, me too.
He's funny. You know, and I like him. I've met him before. He's a good guy. I don't think he's a bad guy. But I don't understand what's the end goal of that. Okay, so you grapple the girl, you drink alcohol, you step with the man. Like, where's that? What's next? Mud wrestling? Because you got to raise the bar now. You can't have the same thing. You can't have less. You got to give him more. Give him more. Entertain more. Feed me more.
Yeah, bring in the lions. Bring in the the Coliseum. Right?
Where do you end up? Where does it end? And for catch wrestling, it ended in WWE. That's where it ended. I mean, I would hate for jiu-jitsu to be that. And people, but these guys are making millions. And look at what we're doing. I think we got to remind ourselves where we came from. What made jiu-jitsu popular in the first place? It worked in a real fight. It was real. It was a mirror to reality. You go, this stuff works. What Kois is doing is not fancy. It's not Van Damme. It's not Bruce Lee. But it's elegant in its own way. We came from reality. I think we've lost track of that. That's one thing. Second thing I think we should be looking at is this improving on us as human beings. Jiu-jitsu taught me a lot about myself, taught me a lot about the world, life, people. What a teacher, man. What a teacher the mats are. Phenomenal teacher. I mean, I think that's important. I don't need jiu-jitsu. I don't need the music. I don't need the noise. I don't need flashy flying arm bars. I can see what people refer to as a boring match, and I'm mesmerized, man, because I know what's going on here. There's a world going on. The boring stuff is the important stuff. There's a world of things going on in there. You're just not paying attention because I got to see the flying arm bar. Dude, I like flying arm bars too, but I can go without them. There's a lot to be learned in that match. I appreciate jiu-jitsu for what it is. I appreciate the athlete's mentality, the physicality of it, the intricacies. Like there's so much to unpack in a match. I don't even think of jiu-jitsu as entertainment, man, because I watch my students go every day. So it's hard for me to like on a weekend to want to watch jiu-jitsu.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But I love to watch my students roll. To me, it's very rewarding. I see them get better. I love to correct them. And when they listen to me and they are getting better and they're becoming like who like I want them to be as grapplers, it's just like, man, like that's rewarding right there, man. I feel great about it. Like to me, that's what we're doing, man. Like that's just about improving on the individual. If you're on ESPN one day or not, it makes no difference to me, man. It doesn't matter. Like, oh, but so-and-so is going to make money. Like, who is making money from this? Like 3 people? Like, it doesn't benefit the community. Like, if I had to choose between being judo or boxing, I'd much rather be judo. I think judo has had an impact on people's life. You ask anyone who's trained judo, like, okay, maybe it's boring for some people, but they've had a very positive impact on the lives of many people. You know, like a lot of people like, no, I learned a lot about discipline and respect on those mats. It's something they emphasize a lot, that we don't, for example. But as far as like in the entertainment aspect of it, how is that improving on people? Not only that, do we really need more entertainment, man? Is that what we're lacking in this world?
Right. I can have endless entertainment on my phone right now.
I never have we had more That's what's so odd to me. We're addicts. We're like crackheads, man, just running around. I need more, feed me more entertainment because the jiu-jitsu's too boring. Give me some fireworks or some like mud wrestling or bikini wrestling or something because it doesn't stop, man. It's like, dude, like we're not lacking entertainment. I go on my phone and it's just like this infinite world of entertainment. You can get lost on your phone. It's like, dude, I don't need more of this. I need less. We need less entertainment, not more. So I think I think that's the wrong way of thinking. And I don't think that I think I'm probably the minority on this. I don't know. Because a lot of people, there's what we call the noisy minority in jiu-jitsu. The people that are like active online and people that say, oh, the gi is dead. I'm like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. I go to Jiu-Jitsu Con, I see 12,000 people in a gi. I don't know. I travel the world teaching. When people say the gi is dead, I'm like, you guys are watching, you guys have a very specific internet algorithm that is feeding the same thing over and over because I see something completely different. But if you say something enough, people end up believing it, right? So they keep saying that like jiu-jitsu needs to become professional. So like the community is obsessed with that topic. I'm not saying it's bad. I just don't think it's more likely bad than good is what I'm saying. Like I don't think it's a good direction for jiu-jitsu.
What what rule set or what gives you encouragement about the future? You know, just this weekend, I was watching that Medusa tournament that Eddie Bravo hosts down in Mexico, where it is slap fighting, and it feels way closer to me to like what I would think of jiu-jitsu. Like, oh yeah, I mean, this is legit. If you can get the shit beat out of you with slaps, I mean, there was a knockout there. I really enjoyed watching it. Like to me, if I was gonna paint the future of jiu-jitsu, I would want to see more slapping. I would want to see more of the self-defense stuff. What gives you excitement about the future for jiu-jitsu?
I was talking to this IBJJF official at the last Nogi Worlds, right? And he was telling me a story about this mom who, you know, had a part-time job, like 3 kids or whatever. She was like in her like late 40s, I think, and she had to but she was still making time to train every day because it was her dream to win a medal at the Worlds, and she took second at the Nogi Worlds or something like that, you know. I can't remember the details. And she made a post about how happy she was and what an achievement that was. And I'm like, man, that's quite the achievement. If you're a mother and, you know, you start training jiu-jitsu when you're 45, and then you put your life and heart and soul into, you know, being good at jiu-jitsu. Next thing you know, you're winning a medal in an international. It's not something that a mom at 45 is thinking about. Like, what an achievement, man. Like, I think that's something extremely positive. I love that about jiu-jitsu. You know, I love that about jiu-jitsu. I love how I see people, it brings people together. I can walk into any gym in the world and I'll be treated as a brother. It's like a church. People call it jiu-jitsu's a cult. I'm like, yeah, call it a cult if you want. I'm fine with that. I mean, it's not like I'm suggesting people shave their heads and commit suicide, you know, but like I'm part of a cult. Okay. Fine.
It's a good cult.
I don't think that's insult. I don't feel insulted by that. I'm like,
right.
It's a good cult. Like, this is my family. This is my religion. You know, I can go to anywhere in the world and people treat me well. I love that about jiu-jitsu. It does improve on people if they're paying attention. It makes people worse too. When people become the professional type, I think it makes them worse. I think they stop improving. Technically, sure, they're improving, but as individuals, I don't think they're getting better, man. Like these people are insulting, attacking people. They got to sell tickets, right? That's the entertainment route. It's sell tickets. Make the money. Sell. Okay, would you want your children behaving that way? Would you teach your children that? To act like Conor McGregor? Would you teach your children that that's how you act? You insult people's religion and their parents and their country, and that's the way to act. Would you teach your kids that?
Hell no.
So why are we applauding this guy then? Because your kids are watching. Now, why Conor does it makes perfect sense to me. It's logical. It works for him. What I will never understand is that I see grown-ass people. I just saw Jake Paul fight a 60-year-old man. Now, listen, I know it was a fake fight, sure. But that the world was like applauding that. I was like, you guys don't think there's anything wrong with this? A 25-year-old YouTuber who showed up yesterday to fight a 60-year-old legend, made more money than him. Fuck, dude. That's crazy to me. That's crazy to me. There's 1 million boxers out there that deserve that kind of money. First of all. Second of all, really, do we need to bring Mike Tyson out of retirement? I know it works for Mike, and but that the world, they don't see a problem with that. I mean, thank God it was a fake fight, but had it been a real fight, man, do you think it's okay for like 60-year-old man to get knocked out by a 25? I don't think that's okay, man. That's not entertaining to me.
Yeah.
Messed up.
I didn't watch the fight because I couldn't articulate it the way you just did, but something just didn't sit right with me about it.
Because we've gotten so used to crazy.
Yeah.
We've normalized lying, we've normalized phony, we've normalized crazy. It's insane. You know, I don't need that to like boxing, man. I love Mike Tyson. I'm a huge fan. You know, I just don't understand why people need that. Like, can't you just watch him in his prime knocking people's block off and just like, oh, that was the man right there?
Yeah.
Shit, get into a conversation about who would have won, Mike Tyson or Hickson. Fun to talk about, you know, like, or just appreciate Mike Tyson. He's like, no need to bring him back and just like, thank God it was a fake fight, man, you know, but I just don't need that as far as entertainment, man. Like, it does entertain me. I think it's the wrong direction, man. Plenty of young boxers out there who are phenomenal, who deserve a shot. And you know what? They could probably make some money because most boxers are broke. Yeah. You know, they could probably just like get that guy paid. You know, and I think the crowd is a little disappoints me sometimes because I think they just need a soap opera. If you need a soap opera to love jiu-jitsu, maybe you don't love jiu-jitsu. Maybe you just love soap operas. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, if you need the noise and the fireworks and the noise, that I don't know, that high school like mentality of shit talking and the drama, maybe you should think if you really love what you do, if you're just like, you like it for the wrong reasons. It's not going to change, I know, but it's just my opinion, man. Like I just how I feel about these things.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think it's a healthy direction. I wouldn't want my kids involved in that world. You know, like I was for this new book I'm working on, I spoke to Satoshi Ishii. It was like the Olympian, you know, like the gold medalist. And he said, I'd much rather have my kids in judo than jiu-jitsu because judo teaches respect. And I'm like, hey, I can't argue back.
Yeah.
I can't. I'm just going to be, yep, you're right. We don't teach that. I'm seeing these little kids, like 12-year-olds, like they win a match and they open their gi and they flash their little baby abs, like, you know. Bro, you get like reprimanded. Like when I started, you like if your 13-year-old did that, his coach would bring him aside and rip him a new one. Like, who do you think you are? Show some respect. You're 13, like you're a yellow belt. Like, shut up. You know, like kind of put people like we don't do that anymore. We're now we praise. There's a term in Portuguese called marqueteiro. It means marketer, right? It's an insult.
Marketers ruin everything, right? That's the Gary Vee line. Gary Vee, online celebrity, has designed an entire life around marketing, and he's the first to say marketers ruin everything.
No, and I don't understand why people look up to these guys. I'm like, the guy's made a business out of talking about running a business, even though he's never run a business. Like the Tony Robbins title. Like, I don't get these things, man. Like, I'm listening to this. I'm like, you know, there are brilliant business people out there, people that actually built empires from scratch. I'll listen to that guy. But the people that talk about business, that made it like famous for being famous type, like you don't actually have a skill, bro. Like you're just good at talking about other people's skills. You know, like, and I see this in jiu-jitsu. I see these purple belts like giving advice in jiu-jitsu. It's like taking advice from a 7-year-old. That's what I'm thinking. I see these people just, or sometimes they're black belts. They just got their black belt and they're like giving you, this is what, you know, we got to do. And I'm like, would you listen to your 6-year-old nephew, like take advice from him and go like, yeah, give me some life wisdom, you know? Dude, we have like red belts alive. You understand that, right? People have been doing this shit for 70 years. You understand that, right? They're still alive. I interviewed Armando Vrit. He died shortly after the interview. He was in his 90s. He was like, I think Helio's second black belt. So, as old school as it gets. The guy hadn't been interviewed in months. Years maybe. Like he was so happy when he saw me because I went over there to talk to him. And I'm just like, this is unbelievable to me. This is unbelievable. And you get these YouTubers with like 3 million followers like taking advice from a YouTuber. Like, this is unbelievable. Am I the only person who thinks so? Isn't that crazy?
I think so. I think wisdom in America is underrated at all levels.
We shit on it. We shit on books. We shit on knowledge. We shit on academia. We shit on science. We shit on. It's like, dude, we're the best at that, man. We have the best universities in this country. Why are we shitting on them? Why do we shit? Why is Elon Musk telling people not to go to college? You know what I want to ask Elon Musk is like, which one of the Tesla engineers does not have a PhD? Which one?
Couldn't tell you.
It's full of shit. That's why. You know. It's just crazy to me. Like some of the things that we believe in here, that you teach people, it's fucking wild.
Well, that would normally be the way to end the podcast, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you a few of my favorite questions. Favorite movie and why? You're a voracious reader, so favorite book and why? And then what are you looking forward to going into 2025?
Favorite movie?
Favorite movie. I'm a movie junkie, so it's like...
I love Quentin Tarantino. I'm a huge... I would love to shake his hand one day. He has a unique ability to create very interesting characters. It's hard to do that. Like, you know, I like novels. It's hard to get a writer that can really create like a character that makes you fall in love with him. Like Aldo the Apache. That's a fucking great character, man. I want more movies on Aldo. I want a biography on Aldo the Apache. That's the guy from Inglourious Basterds, played by Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
I mean, why are there not more movies about Aldo the Apache? It's such a great, he's like a redneck who's like obsessed with killing Nazis. Like it's great.
So is that your favorite one, Inglourious Basterds?
Yeah, that's my favorite. I've seen it 10 times.
Yeah, for me, it's Reservoir Dogs. But
I love that movie too.
Yeah.
I love all Quentin's movies. I don't think he's ever made a movie I didn't like. There's some that I'm not crazy about, but
yeah.
Django, Inglourious Basterds.
Like his probably least his least appreciated one's probably Jackie Brown. And I rewatched that
It's been so
about
long
a year or
since
two
I have
ago.
to watch it again.
You should watch it again because it holds up and it's a great piece of cinema.
Yeah.
It's just not his best one, which is like
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I know, it's so good.
Dude, I can watch that movie over and over. It's so good.
You know what's crazy is when I first saw that movie, I watched it and then about halfway through the movie, I'm like, Quentin's like lost a step. This was just his excuse to get all of his boys together and make like a fun Hollywood movie. I was kind of like indifferent about it halfway through the movie. And by the end of it, when he ties it all together, I'm like, oh, I see what he did there. That is a brilliant piece of like storytelling.
Yeah.
So what about favorite book?
Depends on the topic, man. It depends. I go through phases. My one book, if you asked me that question maybe 10 years ago, there's this book, I've read it many times. It's called Listen, Little Man by Wilhelm Reich.
I'm going to have to add this to the list.
Short read. It's a short read, but it's like it's an old man ranting at the end of his life. It's great. There's a history book that there's two history books that I love. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, it's hard to say. But the one that I love is The Great War for Civilization by Robert Fisk. It's a great read. Great read.
The Great War for Civilization?
Great War for Civilization.
What period does it cover?
It covers, he's a reporter covering the Middle East from the Iranian Revolution all the way to the Iraq War. On the ground, not embedded. In the trenches.
I have to read that.
In the trenches. Not the kind of guy like, oh, I got friends with like, I'm going to be here wearing bulletproof vest and making sure the Air Force is supporting. No. In the trenches.
Oh, I'm going to have to read that.
It's very, very, I think he died recently, but very unique individual.
And then what are you looking forward to in 2025?
I'd like to make more time to write my books. I'm working on 2 books right now. Actually, I got 2 other. I have a hard time finishing projects. I have a lot of things I need to work on. I had a hard time making time and energy because a lot of times, like I teach kids class now, right? And kids knock the wind out of you. I love teaching kids, especially because you develop a relationship with them and you see them grow. It's very rewarding. But I get home, man. I don't want to do anything but sit back and relax. So I got to get my work done either in the morning before I go to class, or shortly after lunch, right? Like in the afternoon before my evening class. And it's just hard because you have errands, like run a business, like the phone's blowing up all day. You get interrupted, or like trying to sit down and write between kids.
Yeah.
It's just like, dude, people just don't leave you alone. Like it's hard. Like you just got to shut off your phone, lock yourself in a room. And like, my first book, I was able to finish it fairly quickly and easily because it was during lockdown. Oh my God.
No distraction.
Dude, I wish we had lockdown once a year. That'd be great.
Just do that Spaniard thing, right? Where you get like a month off every year.
Oh, dude, I don't think that's just a Spaniard. I think they have that in Brazil too. I think it's a very common around the world that we're just workaholics over here. I think that's healthy. Yeah. I think you need that once, maybe not a month. I don't even need a month, man. I need 2 weeks, not even, bro. Like if I get a week off a year of just leave me alone, no one calls me, I'm just going to sit by the beach and, drink coconut water. I don't get that because I'm jiu-jitsu 7 days a week. But I think that's healthy, man. There's nothing wrong with that, Yeah, it's making time. That's what I would like to do. 2025 is organize my life and day to make the time to either be alone and be able to focus on writing a book or doing whatever I want to do.
I love it, man. Well, when the new book comes out next year, when you get it done, I want to have you back on because I feel like we barely hit the tippy top of what your current book is about with the history of jiu-jitsu, and I appreciate the hell of you coming out, man.
No, for sure, man. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves.